Welcome to Conspiracy Theories Podcast. I'm your host, Noah Smith, and today's episode unpacks one of the strangest and most debated space conspiracies of the modern era, the hollow moon theory. It's an idea that challenges everything we think we know about the moon. What if Earth's only natural satellite isn't natural at all? What if it's not solid rock, but something else entirely? Something hollow, artificial, and possibly built by intelligent hands. In 1969, when astronauts from NASA's Apollo 11 mission made their historic landing on the moon, the world watched in awe. The Cold War had driven a relentless space race, with the United States and the Soviet Union competing for technological supremacy. That historic step, taken by Neil Armstrong, was not just a scientific milestone. It was a symbolic victory in a geopolitical battle. But beneath the celebration, quiet whispers had already begun to circulate. Whispers that suggested the moon was far more mysterious than anyone had admitted. Even before humans landed, scientists noticed anomalies. Seismic experiments conducted by NASA during the Apollo missions triggered unexpected results. When the lunar module crashed into the moon's surface, the seismic data recorded a phenomenon that made some researchers uneasy. The moon rang like a bell. For nearly an hour, vibrations echoed through its body, something that doesn't happen with a solid object. This strange reaction gave birth to unsettling questions. What exactly is the moon made of? The hollow moon theory didn't emerge overnight. Its roots stretch back to the 1960s and 70s, when space exploration was beginning to uncover the moon's secrets. While mainstream science dismissed the idea of a hollow celestial body, a handful of researchers, writers, and theorists began to suggest otherwise. Their belief that the moon might not be a natural satellite at all, but an artificial construct, possibly created by advanced extraterrestrial intelligence. As the Apollo missions continued, so did the strange reports. Astronauts spoke of strange lights, unexplainable signals, and the sensation of being watched. Soviet scientists, meanwhile, studied lunar data and concluded that certain lunar characteristics, its orbital path, rotation, and composition, defied natural formation. Some researchers speculated that the moon had been placed in its perfect orbit deliberately, possibly to monitor Earth or influence its environment. In later decades, authors and theorists began to piece together these threads into a full-blown conspiracy. They argued that the moon's density, or rather its lack of it, was further proof. Gravity measurements taken by various probes suggested inconsistencies in mass distribution. Craters were oddly shallow despite their large diameter, suggesting something underneath the surface was cushioning the impacts. And some images from lunar missions hinted at strange geometric patterns or structures just beneath the surface. For believers, this wasn't coincidence. It was design. They saw the moon as a kind of cosmic Trojan horse, something watching us, studying us, or perhaps guiding our development from the stars. And while many experts would later call these ideas fantasy or science fiction, the theory continues to attract attention, curiosity, and debate. Because if the moon isn't what we think it is, what else might be hiding in plain sight? The rise of the hollow moon theory came during a time when the world was caught in a web of rapid change and deep suspicion. In the years following World War II, global power shifted, and the Cold War began casting a long shadow over science and politics alike. The United States and the Soviet Union weren't just competing over ideology, they were battling for dominance in the skies. The space race wasn't only about reaching new frontiers, it was about control, secrecy, and proving superiority in a hostile world. This political environment bred a growing distrust of official narratives. Governments were seen as capable of hiding uncomfortable truths, especially if they posed a threat to national stability or security. In this climate, any unexplained phenomena, especially those involving outer space, quickly attracted suspicion. When the Apollo missions returned with data that didn't quite add up, it didn't take long for fringe thinkers and independent researchers to start asking hard questions. Compounding this atmosphere of suspicion was the emerging counterculture of the 1960s and 70s. In an era where people were questioning authority, protesting wars, and challenging the status quo, Mainstream explanations were no longer automatically trusted. It was a time when conspiracy theories flourished, not only about the moon, but about everything from the Kennedy assassination to UFO cover-ups. The moon, as a mysterious and unreachable object, became the perfect canvas for alternative narratives. At the same time, new scientific discoveries were adding fuel to the fire. Radar studies of the moon's surface revealed odd properties. Its crust seemed unusually thin in certain areas, while its core appeared smaller than expected. The seismic data, showing long, ringing vibrations, added an eerie note. These findings were explained in scientific terms, but those explanations left room for interpretation, especially by those already skeptical of government honesty. The idea that the moon might be artificial wasn't entirely new. Ancient cultures had myths suggesting the moon appeared suddenly in Earth's skies. Some early philosophers, like Anaxagoras, believed it was a reflective body rather than a solid one. But now, modern technology was revealing things those ancient thinkers couldn't have imagined. The moon's orbit, for instance, is almost perfectly circular, something that's rare for natural satellites. It also presents the same face to Earth at all times due to a phenomenon called tidal locking. While these traits can be explained through physics, they also struck some as suspiciously precise. In this historical and cultural backdrop, the hollow moon theory found fertile ground. Writers began to suggest that the moon could be a massive spaceship, possibly abandoned or still in use. The idea was bold, but it resonated. Science fiction had already primed the public imagination with stories of hidden bases, alien visitors, and cosmic mysteries. When real-life data didn't line up perfectly with expectations, fiction began to blur into belief. The result was a theory that, while dismissed by mainstream science, refused to fade away. It had become part of a growing narrative that questioned what we really knew about the universe and who might be shaping it. One of the earliest figures to bring public attention to the hollow moon theory was Vasin and Shcherbakov, two scientists from the Soviet Academy of Sciences. In 1970, they published a controversial article titled, "Is the Moon the Creation of an Intelligence?" In it, they proposed that the moon was not a natural celestial body at all, but a planetoid that had been hollowed out and modified by unknown beings. Their theory claimed that the moon had been steered into Earth's orbit by a technologically advanced civilization for purposes unknown. Vasin and Shcherbakov's ideas were largely ignored by the scientific community, but their article circulated widely among alternative thinkers. It marked one of the first modern attempts to frame the moon not as a passive satellite, but as an object with a possible artificial origin. The article touched on several anomalies, including the strange density of the moon, its unusual orbital path, and the shallow depth of many craters, which appeared inconsistent with natural impact patterns. While their conclusions were speculative, they offered just enough technical detail to spark debate. Another prominent figure in the development of hollow moon ideas was Don Wilson, an American writer who expanded on Vasin and Shcherbakov's claims. In his 1975 book, Our Mysterious Spaceship Moon, Wilson proposed that the moon could be a massive spacecraft disguised as a satellite. He cited the same seismic data from the Apollo missions, especially the reports of the moon ringing like a bell, and suggested that only a hollow structure could produce such a sound. He argued that NASA was either unaware of the truth or deliberately hiding it. Later, authors like Christopher Knight and Alan Butler added a more mathematical and philosophical angle. They argued that the moon's size, distance from Earth, and role in stabilizing Earth's tilt were not just remarkable, they were too perfect to be accidental. Their work claimed that the moon's placement allowed for the emergence of life on Earth by creating tides, regulating climate, and even influencing human evolution. They described these traits as evidence of intelligent design. To them, the moon was not just a mystery, it was a message. In the conspiracy world, others began linking the moon to broader theories. Some suggested that secret bases existed on the lunar surface, possibly shared by humans and extraterrestrials. Others pointed to strange photographic anomalies in NASA images, lights, shadows, or shapes that looked mechanical rather than natural. Richard Hoagland, a former NASA consultant, promoted the idea that remnants of ancient structures could be found on the moon, buried beneath dust or hidden in plain sight. While these figures came from different backgrounds and held different beliefs, they all contributed to a growing body of alternative speculation. Each added new layers, scientific, philosophical, or fantastical, that made the hollow moon theory more complex and more compelling. What started as an odd Soviet hypothesis began to evolve into a sprawling set of ideas with roots in science, history, and the unknown. Their work laid the foundation for a theory that, despite being ridiculed by many, refused to be forgotten. Central to the hollow moon theory are the seismic experiments conducted during the Apollo missions. These missions, particularly Apollo 12 and Apollo 13, deployed devices known as seismometers on the lunar surface to detect moonquakes. To test them, NASA intentionally crashed lunar modules into the moon, triggering artificial impacts. The results were startling. When the Apollo 12 module hit the surface, the moon reverberated for nearly an hour. NASA's own reports described it as ringing like a bell. This oddity caught the attention of many. On Earth, seismic waves are dampened quickly due to the planet's molten core and water-rich crust. But the moon, dry and seemingly solid, allowed the shock waves to travel for a much longer period. Some scientists explain this by pointing to the moon's composition, a dry, fractured outer shell, but conspiracy theorists latched onto a different interpretation. A hollow interior, they argued, would naturally allow such a prolonged echo effect. It was, to them, a smoking gun. Other strange data came from gravity measurements. Lunar orbiters detected what are known as mascons, or mass concentrations, beneath the surface of the moon. These dense areas caused fluctuations in the moon's gravitational field. Scientists explained them as remnants of asteroid impacts that compressed the crust. But hollow moon supporters saw these anomalies differently. They speculated that the mascons could be remnants of massive machinery or structural reinforcements inside an artificial shell. Photographs taken during the Apollo missions also raised questions. Some images showed geometric shapes or shadows that appeared too precise to be natural formations. Straight lines, right angles, and symmetries, things rarely found in untouched nature, appeared in various craters and terrain features. While most experts attributed these to tricks of light or erosion, others believed they might be evidence of ancient structures, perhaps long buried or camouflaged. Radio transmissions added another layer. During their time on the moon, astronauts occasionally reported hearing odd noises, high-pitched tones, or unexplained interference. Official explanations cited mechanical feedback or signal interference, but theorists wondered if they were picking up something else, perhaps a signal from within the moon itself. If the moon housed technology or was once a functioning craft, might it still emit a residual hum or internal signal? One of the most often cited points is the moon's size and position in Earth's sky. It's 400 times smaller than the sun, but also 400 times closer, which makes them appear the same size during a solar eclipse. This rare coincidence is so precise that it creates total solar eclipses where the moon perfectly blots out the sun. Some theorists argue this is not a coincidence at all. To them, it's another sign of design, proof that the moon was placed intentionally, possibly by an advanced intelligence that understood orbital mechanics far beyond human capability. Together, these pieces, seismic data, gravitational anomalies, odd visuals, and perfect alignment, form the foundation of the hollow moon theory. None of them prove the theory outright, but they raise enough questions to keep the debate alive. For believers, it's not about one smoking gun. It's about the weight of all the anomalies combined. The scientific community has addressed these anomalies, offering explanations grounded in known physics and geological models. NASA and other space agencies point to the moon's unique structure as a result of its formation history. According to the prevailing giant impact hypothesis, the moon was created when a Mars-sized object collided with Earth billions of years ago. The debris from this massive impact eventually coalesced into the moon. This would explain its unusual composition, including a thinner crust and lower density compared to Earth. The moon's ringing effect, they argue, is not evidence of it being hollow, but of it being dry and rigid. Unlike Earth, which has water and a molten interior to absorb seismic energy, The moon's solid structure allows vibrations to travel farther and last longer. This doesn't require a hollow space, just a specific type of rock and a lack of water. NASA scientists have published detailed models showing how lunar geology could produce the effects recorded by the Apollo seismometers. Mascons, too, have been studied in depth. Satellite data suggests these are areas where ancient asteroid impacts compressed the crust, creating dense regions beneath large basins. Their gravitational pull affects spacecraft orbits slightly, which helps scientists discover them. Far from being mysterious, mascons are now used to map the moon's interior structure and improve landing accuracy for future missions. While strange at first glance, they fit within accepted geophysical models. The geometric shapes and odd shadows in photos are typically explained by lighting angles, image resolution, and the human brain's tendency to find patterns, a phenomenon known as pareidolia. This is the same effect that causes people to see faces in clouds or animals in rock formations. On the moon, with its stark contrast and harsh lighting, shadows can create illusions of symmetry and design. NASA has released high-resolution versions of many suspect images, showing that what once looked artificial is often just jagged terrain viewed at an odd angle. As for the radio anomalies, they've been mostly attributed to technical malfunctions, interference from equipment, or transmission distortions between Earth and the moon. Engineers involved in the Apollo program documented several such issues and explained them as part of the challenges of operating in a harsh space environment. Without sustained patterns or sources of the signals, most scientists have dismissed them as noise, not evidence of communication or internal signals. The moon's perfect size and position during a solar eclipse, while fascinating, is considered by astronomers to be a cosmic coincidence. There is no known mechanism by which the moon could be placed into orbit with such precision. Its current distance from Earth is slowly increasing as tidal forces transfer momentum, suggesting it wasn't always in its current position and won't remain there forever. These long-term changes further support a natural evolution rather than intelligent placement. To mainstream scientists, the hollow moon theory falls into the category of pseudoscience. It selectively uses data, removes context, and often misinterprets scientific results. The theory's appeal lies more in its mystery and challenge to authority than in its factual basis. But that doesn't stop it from persisting. For many, the official explanations, however thorough, are not enough to quiet the sense that something about the moon still feels off. Among those who question the official explanations, many argue that the skepticism itself deserves scrutiny. They believe the outright dismissal of alternative theories by scientists and space agencies is part of a larger pattern, one where inconvenient questions are brushed aside rather than fully investigated. To these skeptics, the refusal to consider unorthodox ideas only deepens suspicion. They see the hollow moon theory not as a fringe fantasy, but as a doorway to bigger truths that institutions may be unwilling or unable to face. One common critique centers on how quickly certain anomalies were explained away. For instance, when the moon rang for nearly an hour after the Apollo 12 impact, the response from NASA came fast. It was due to the moon's dry, fractured crust. But some critics felt that explanation was too convenient, especially since follow-up data from other impacts showed similar results. They argue that instead of digging deeper, the scientific response was shaped by a need to protect a pre-existing narrative that the moon is natural and unremarkable. There's also the question of access. Most of the moon's surface has never been explored directly. Only a handful of manned missions landed in specific regions, all on the near side of the moon. Skeptics wonder why, after decades of technological advancement, no country has sent a crewed mission back to explore the far side or investigate anomalies spotted from orbit. The lack of new manned exploration fuels the idea that something is being hidden or avoided. Furthermore, conspiracy theorists point out that lunar samples returned to Earth have been tightly controlled. NASA holds the majority of these samples and only releases them in limited amounts for study. This gatekeeping, they argue, creates a barrier to independent verification. If the moon were artificial, even in part, they believe that the evidence could be locked away in these samples, microscopic anomalies, unknown materials, or structural elements that don't occur naturally. Skeptics also challenge the motivations behind mainstream denial. Some suggest that admitting the moon might be artificial would shake the foundations of science, religion, and history. It would imply not just the existence of advanced extraterrestrial life, but its direct involvement in Earth's development. For governments and institutions built on a certain understanding of reality, such a shift could be destabilizing. Thus, they argue, secrecy isn't just about hiding data, it's about protecting worldviews. Critics of the theory often frame it as a symptom of mistrust, but believers argue the mistrust is justified. After all, many scientific breakthroughs once began as ridiculed ideas. Plate tectonics, the heliocentric model, even the existence of germs faced harsh resistance at first. To those who support the hollow moon theory, their stance is not anti-science, it's pro-questioning. They see their doubts as part of a long tradition of challenging what we think we know, even when it goes against the grain. In their view, the moon may be more than a rock in the sky. It may be a puzzle left unsolved because the pieces don't fit into accepted science, or perhaps they were never meant to. The hollow moon theory taps into more than just astronomical curiosity. It touches on deep psychological and cultural themes. At its core is the idea that something so familiar, so ever-present in our skies, could be something else entirely. That suggestion cuts at the foundation of what we take for granted, and it forces a reevaluation not just of the moon, but of the world we live in. The theory doesn't only question the nature of a celestial body, it questions the limits of human understanding and the trust we place in authority. There's a long history of humanity assigning meaning to the moon. For thousands of years, it has inspired myths, calendars, religions, and rituals. It has guided crops, tides, and time itself. To discover that this ancient companion might not be what it seems would reshape the collective psyche. Some psychologists believe conspiracy theories like this one reflect a basic human need for control in a chaotic world. When faced with the unknown, or when institutions fail to provide satisfying answers, people seek alternative explanations that give them agency, even if those explanations challenge logic. There's also the issue of pattern recognition. The human brain is designed to find order in disorder, to connect dots, even when the links might not be there. When someone hears that the moon rings like a bell, or sees an oddly shaped crater, it's tempting to assign deeper meaning. Combined with the massive scale and mystery of space, such patterns can feel profound. The mind fills in gaps, weaving them into narratives that are compelling, even if unproven. Culturally, the hollow moon theory reflects a broader fascination with hidden knowledge. It fits into a lineage of stories where secrets are buried in plain sight, somewhat just waiting to be uncovered. In fiction, the idea of hollow planets or alien-built moons is a common trope. From ancient science fiction novels to blockbuster films, the notion that what we see is not what we get has enduring appeal. For some, believing the moon is hollow isn't just a theory, it's a symbol of how reality might be more complex or more controlled than we're told. There's also the allure of being part of a select group that sees what others don't. Belief in fringe theories often brings a sense of empowerment. If the moon is hollow and others refuse to see it, then the believer becomes a kind of explorer, someone who questions, who thinks critically, who sees beyond the veil. In a society where people often feel powerless, this feeling of special insight can be incredibly compelling. Ultimately, the hollow moon theory is more than a question about space. It's a reflection of modern culture's relationship with truth, authority, and mystery. Whether it's about scientific anomalies or psychological projection, it persists because it resonates. Not necessarily because it's right, but because it offers something that certainty does not. The thrill of wonder, the hunger for truth, and the possibility, however remote, that everything we know might be wrong. As the hollow moon theory spread through books, documentaries, and online forums, its influence began to show in unexpected places. Pop culture quickly took notice. Science fiction films started featuring artificial moons, hidden bases, and alien monitoring stations. Television shows hinted at secret lunar structures and mysterious signals. These narratives weren't always direct references to the theory, but they mirrored its ideas and gave them a broader audience. In some cases, the line between fiction and speculation blurred, turning entertainment into a vessel for conspiracy. Social media accelerated this process. Platforms like YouTube and Reddit gave rise to communities where users shared footage, dissected NASA imagery, and debated the meaning behind official statements. Hashtags like Hollow Moon and Moon Truth drew attention to photos of strange shadows or unexplained lights on the lunar surface. These conversations weren't limited to science enthusiasts. They included amateur astronomers, spiritual thinkers, and those deeply invested in the idea that truth was being hidden in plain sight. Mainstream media, too, began to reflect the growing fascination. News outlets occasionally featured stories on the strangest space theories, and while often framed with skepticism, the coverage still exposed millions to the concept. In doing so, it pushed the hollow moon theory further into public consciousness. Even casual viewers who didn't believe in it outright began to recognize it as part of a wider trend, one that questioned not just space science, but all official narratives. This shift had real-world effects. School teachers reported students asking if the moon was real. Podcasts and influencers included hollow moon segments alongside discussions of flat Earth, ancient aliens, and simulation theory. A kind of alternative cosmology emerged, one where reality itself felt like a construct, and the moon served as a constant reminder that what we see isn't always what we get. In this environment, doubt became a kind of belief system, one built on questioning rather than accepting. The impact wasn't limited to media and education. Some New Age movements adopted the theory as part of their spiritual worldview, linking the moon to extraterrestrial intelligences or higher consciousness. They saw the moon not just as artificial, but as a beacon or energy amplifier. Lunar phases took on new meaning, interpreted not as gravitational events, but as signs of deeper influence. Crystals, rituals, and meditations began to incorporate the moon's supposed artificiality, blending science fiction with spirituality. Meanwhile, space agencies took note of the rising public interest. NASA and other organizations began releasing more data and clearer images of the moon's surface, partly to counter misinformation. But for many, these efforts only reinforced the idea of a cover-up. If nothing was being hidden, why the sudden transparency? Why the push to debunk what was once ignored? The hollow moon theory had become more than just an idea. It was now a part of cultural storytelling, a symbol of mistrust, and a challenge to conventional wisdom. Whether taken seriously or used as metaphor, it became a lens through which people viewed not just the sky, but the institutions that claimed to explain it. In doing so, it shaped how we talk about knowledge itself, where it comes from, who controls it, and what it means to see beyond the veil. Among the most fringe extensions of the hollow moon theory is the belief that the moon isn't just hollow, but that it's a functioning structure, actively monitoring Earth. Some propose that it operates as a surveillance device, placed in orbit by an advanced extraterrestrial race long before the dawn of human civilization. This idea isn't built solely on the moon's odd seismic behavior or its near-perfect orbit, but on the suggestion that its presence has been crucial to human development, both biologically and culturally. Certain fringe theorists claim that the moon may be an observational outpost, staffed or automated, watching humanity for reasons unknown. They cite ancient myths describing the moon's sudden appearance in the sky, including accounts from tribes in Africa and South America whose oral histories suggest a time before the moon existed. To believers, these stories hint at a deliberate insertion of the moon into Earth's orbit within recorded memory. They interpret this not as mythology, but as historical record distorted over time. Others take the theory in a more metaphysical direction. They argue the moon is not only artificial, but energetically manipulative. According to this belief, it emits frequencies that influence human thought and emotion. These theorists suggest that lunar cycles don't just affect tides or biology, they affect consciousness. Full moons are seen as moments of energetic manipulation, where moods, behavior, and mental clarity are subtly adjusted by forces beyond human control. In this view, the moon acts less like a rock and more like a psychic transmitter. Even further out on the spectrum are those who tie the moon to interdimensional entities. These ideas draw from ancient astronaut theories and occult symbolism. They suggest that the moon is not just a structure in space, but a gateway, a bridge between realms. Some believe it's linked to time manipulation, or that it serves as a sort of cosmic lock, preventing human beings from accessing a broader spiritual truth. They point to odd lunar alignments with megalithic sites on Earth and sacred geometries encoded in lunar measurements. A few researchers propose that the moon was placed deliberately to stabilize Earth's axial tilt, creating a climate where life could thrive. But if it was placed with such precision, by whom and for what purpose? Some speculate it was a tool of terraforming, part of a massive planetary engineering project conducted eons ago. If true, it would mean humanity lives not on a random rock in a random solar system, but inside a carefully tuned experiment. These ideas are often dismissed outright by mainstream science, and not without reason. They lack empirical support and often rely on interpretive leaps. Yet they persist. For some, they offer a framework that explains not only cosmic mystery, but personal experience. They speak to the feeling that something is off, that reality is curated, that we are not alone, and perhaps never were. Whether the moon is a relic, a machine, a beacon, or a cage, these fringe views suggest it holds a secret, one not of rock and dust, but of purpose. The hollow moon theory, with all its layers, from seismic oddities and mathematical coincidences to ancient myths and cosmic surveillance, remains one of the most provocative space conspiracies ever proposed. Its endurance is not rooted in hard evidence, but in its ability to challenge assumptions and stir the imagination. Whether viewed as a physical structure, a symbolic mystery, or a psychological projection, the moon has come to represent more than a satellite. It's a screen onto which humanity projects its deepest fears and questions. For many, the theory offers a kind of intellectual escape from a rigid, ordered universe. In a world governed by rules and predictability, the hollow moon represents the unknown. It invites speculation, storytelling, and a sense of wonder. That wonder, however irrational it may seem to some, reflects something deeply human, the need to explore beyond accepted limits. It also reveals a profound distrust of authority, of scientific institutions, and of the idea that we already have all the answers. Critics argue that conspiracy theories like this one undermine science and promote falsehoods. And while that can be true, there's also another side to it. The persistence of such theories shows that many people feel excluded from the conversation about truth. They turn to alternative ideas, not only because they distrust institutions, but because those ideas give them a voice, however controversial it may be. In that sense, the hollow moon theory isn't just about the moon. It's about belief, power, and the right to ask impossible questions. The theory has taken on a life of its own. It exists now as a cultural artifact, circulating in memes, echoed in music lyrics, shaping the plot lines of films and novels. It's become part of the language of modern skepticism, a shorthand for questioning everything. Even those who don't believe it often know what it is. It has slipped into the wider mythology of the digital age, where truth is fragmented and mystery has currency. And perhaps that's where its power lies. Not in being true or false, but in being unresolved. The moon is still up there every night, unchanged and silent, and in that silence, it becomes whatever we need it to be, a guiding light, a haunting presence, a mechanical eye, or a hollow shell. The lack of certainty gives it shape. The unanswered questions give it life. So whether the moon is a natural satellite formed from ancient debris, or an engineered artifact placed with cosmic precision, it continues to inspire. And while mainstream science may never accept the hollow moon theory, its influence will persist, because it speaks not only to what we see in the sky, but to what we seek within ourselves, the mystery, the meaning, and the possibility that reality might be far stranger than we ever imagined. Thanks for listening. This has been another episode of Conspiracy Theories Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you'd like to support the show, subscribe to Conspiracy Theories Podcast on Spotify. Subscribe now.